Hello and welcome to another episode of the Tabletop for Two podcast. I'm Brad Van Vutt.
I'm Emily Van Vutt.
And we are back with another episode. Pardon the sound of fireworks, possibly, that might be going off as we're recording this right before the 4th of July holiday week, or I guess at the end of the weekend, but before July.
Before
3rd.
The actual 4th of July.
Right, but our neighbors love setting off this stuff early.
They've been setting them off for 2 weeks.
Yes, pardon the noise of Aaron Katz in the hallway as he wanders in and out of the room. But we are very excited to talk about...
Possibly the giggles of a child who has not gone to sleep yet also.
Also true. Also true. But that's okay, because we're going to be talking a bunch of games that we're very excited to talk about. A couple of games that we've been wanting to get to for a while have been gotten. Later on the show, we're going to be reviewing a full review on Clank, which I know we talked about impressions a couple of months ago, but we're going to do a full-fledged review because we can't still stop playing this game. But just a quick reminder before we get into it, follow us online on social media. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is where you can seek us out at Tabletop for Two for any of those. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play Music, or any other podcasting service that you use. We have BGG Guild number 2623. And as usual, we are always soliciting episode topics from our listeners. If you have anything you'd like to hear us talk about as our main segment, let us know, and we will certainly consider it. I am very, very excited to talk about the first game that we
bet you are.
That we're talking about. And this is a recent reprint from GMT Games, a long sought after game that's now readily available, and that is 1960, The Making of the President. This is the game from Jason Matthews and of Twilight Struggle fame and Christian Leonard, a co-design. Z-Man published it originally it's been about 10 years, but it quickly went out of print and has been very difficult to find lately. GMT Games did a brand new reprint with all new art for the board, the cards, some streamlined rules as well. And we finally got it. We backed it on P500. We took it for a spin, and I came away pretty happy with the end result.
And the loser.
That's less important than the fact that the game was a lot of fun. What did you think?
Well, as always, Brad makes me the bad guy because I love being the bad guy. So I was...
Well, bad is a relative term in this case, considering we're talking about the election of the president, because it's basically Nixon versus Kennedy.
Yes, but anyone who has read a history book knows about Nixon and his...
Well, yeah, 14 years later, but
right.
In 1960, nobody could foresee that. So this was
for all purposes here. I was bad guy. You were the good guy.
And it was, like I said, it was really
a lot of fun though.
It was. This is a card-driven game, which draws a lot of inspiration from Twilight Struggle, as I guess you would expect. But instead of competing superpowers battling for world and global influence, you are competing presidential candidates vying for electoral votes. Yeah. And the game is essentially, it takes place over 9 rounds, and each round players are going to have a hand of cards, and you're going to be using those cards to either mimic some of the events that happened during that time, or to use those to campaign across the country.
Cubes out in different states.
Well, so you're trying to swing the states one way or the other to vote for you when it comes general election time. And the way this one works is that only one player can ever have like a presence in a given state. So like if you go campaign in a state that your opponent controls, then you'll actually be removing their influence out of that state before you're able to add yours into the mix.
Which makes complete sense.
Yeah. You can also try to get the media on your side, which helps give you control over, the importance of the different campaign issues that are going on. And you can also try to vie for control of those campaign issues as well, which is important because getting control of those issues will gain you valuable endorsements as you go through the campaign. Endorsements are kind of helpful because they'll swing them at the end of the game. Well, the momentum tiles are also helpful as well. So in Twilight Struggle, each card either has an event that is affiliated with your faction, your opponent's faction, or for both. And if you play a card that's an opponent's card, they get to trigger the event automatically. Well, 1960 has a similar system, but it works a little bit differently in this one. So when you play a card that has an opponent or a dual event on it, and you choose not to use that card for the event, you choose to use it for the campaign points that are on the card, your opponent can actually spend one of their momentum tiles in order to trigger that event once you're done the action. And I really enjoy that part of the game because it adds a different strategic element than Twilight Struggle does. In Twilight Struggle, it's, hey, I know this bad thing is going to happen regardless, so how can I play it at a time that's going to make it less harmful to me? Mm-hmm. Whereas in this game, it's, man, I have this really bad event in my hand that maybe I'll hold on to and try to kind of fake my opponent out into wasting their momentum tiles early in the rounds, so that when I play this better card, that they won't have anything, they won't be able to trigger the event on it, which would be really helpful. And then you, as the person who's looking at that event, be like, man, that event's pretty good, but I wonder if he's holding on to something that's even better that I might want to save my tiles for. And then they also have a cool mechanic where if you play a card that you absolutely positively don't want to let your opponent use, you can actually spend 2 of your momentum tokens in order to preempt your opponent from being able to play.
Yeah, I had to do that once.
Well, because there's some really powerful events in the game for sure.
What was the one I had was let you put out cubes in 5 or 6 different states, something like that. And I was like, yeah, no, you're not getting your hands on that one. Yeah, and it's interesting because you do have to, the campaign points that you can spend are kind of limited, so you do have to be very, very smart with how you allocate going around the country, because another fun fact about the game is you can actually only add influence in the state where your candidate is located. And if you want to move them long distances, you have to spend valuable points on your turn in order to do that. So, unless, of course, there are cards in there that tell you can move about the board freely without having to pay, the cost to swap regions or whatever.
Yeah, move you around, stuff like that.
Right.
There's 2 rounds in the game that are a little bit different. The one round is, I think in round 6, you actually have debates between one another. So at the end of each of the turns, you're going to save one of your cards that you were dealt, and that card is going to go into a campaign strategy pile. And during the debate, you and your opponents are going to play the cards one by one to try to win the debates on the issues that are in the campaign, which can be a valuable source of state support that you're trying to throw out. And then the very last round of the game is Election Day, where you are actually trying to do a last-minute swing of certain states as a ploy to try to roll the election your way.
And you failed miserably at that.
I did, and because you can plan ahead for those as well. And the interesting way the game settles the election results is, of course, any state that you control, you get. Any state that is still split down the middle is going to go to whichever player has an endorsement in that region. And if there's no endorsement in that region, then each state is either going to lean Democrat or Republican and will go to that player. You count up all the votes from the states that you received, and whoever gets the most electoral votes, or I think it's whoever gets to above 269 in this case, wins the presidency and wins the game. And yeah, like I said, this was a tremendous amount of fun. It played differently enough from Twilight Struggle.
Well, there weren't really any neutral cards, which is kind of what I liked. There's the ones where it could go either way, but I wouldn't really classify it as a neutral event.
Well, those were just events that that helped whichever player played them usually.
Right, but I'm saying they weren't necessarily neutral.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of enjoyed that. You know what I mean? It was just kind of you have this or this. You have to make a choice.
Well, and the other thing that was interesting with this one, too, is the random mechanic in the game is there's a draw bag that has the different cubes from each player in them. And occasionally, when you're trying to infiltrate a state that your opponent is carrying, or later in the game when you're trying to make those last-minute support ploys, there's a random drawing mechanic that you use to see how successful you are with that, and you can actually influence. So if you play,
and when you play the cards for the campaign points, you get the rest.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So if you play lower campaign point cards, you'll get more cubes into this bag.
I think 2 is the highest, right, on any card.
2 is the highest number of rest cubes per card, but those are only on the cards that give you 2 campaign points. But the cards that give you 4 campaign points when you play them get 0. So the better cards will hurt you down the road with that random mechanic, which is also an interesting little thing. It's also the event cards in this game are much different. In Twilight Struggle, the events come out in predetermined stages. Certain cards will appear at certain points in the game, and you can plan for that. In this game, you don't have that. You have just one deck of cards that gets all shuffled together, and so it's a little bit more unpredictable. And you really have to make sure that you are anticipating anything that might pop up, as I guess one would expect during October presidential campaign. I felt
like I was not well enough prepared for the debates, but I came out okay anyway.
Mm-hmm. I think you won 2 of the issues, if I'm not mistaken, during those debates. Those are a tricky part to explain at the beginning of the game, but once you've played it once, you kind of get it. And this one also played pretty fast. So since this one has a set number of turns in the game, you can easily schedule it out. It's only about 90 to 120 minutes when you play it. So it was a lot of fun. I had high hopes for the game when it was coming in. It definitely lived up to those. I'll be interested to play them again, and like I said, it kind of played out like a actual presidential election would, where I as Kennedy carried way more states than Nixon, but I
wrestled away the big states.
Right, you were able to put a stronghold on New York and California specifically, because if you had lost either of those 2 states, you would have lost the game. And I made a strong
California.
New York would have been too.
Well, I know, but didn't we deem California was the one that won it for me?
California was the one where I had a better chance to wrestle from you, because New York,
because you had that card. So there are some cards that you can play that have effects during certain points of the game. Like there's one that says only during the debates, only during election day. Like he had an election day card that said he gets 5 pulls out of the bag in California.
Right.
And of course, so I just loaded up over there, hoping that he was not going to pull his cubes, and he pulled my cubes out.
Mm-hmm. It's like I said, it was a very interesting experience, and
a little anxiety-inducing there at the end.
Oh, you thought so? See, I didn't get the same level of tension that I get playing Twilight Struggle. As I didn't get that same level of like worry and dread, basically. That's in that game. This one was a little bit lighter, I think. I would actually probably recommend this one first to people if you're interested to get into an area control game of that sort.
It was fun.
Yeah, it was a good time. 1960, Making of the President. If you've had your eye on this, definitely go check it out.
Next on the list is Guilds of London.
Yeah, this is a TMG game. It is, speaking of area control, this is a game where it's a card driven action game, which is fun. And the cards that you're playing, you can either play you have these little guild master guys that you put out on this board, and the board is comprised in the 2-player game. It's a little bit different than the higher player counts. 2-player game has a 5x5 grid of tiles with the guild hall in the center, and the goal is to get your workers to the different guilds that are on the board to control them. Each guild has like a target number that you're trying to get a total number of workers between the different players on those spaces. And once you do that, the guild basically activates. Whoever has the most workers on the space wins a top prize. Second most workers win a second prize, and you flip the tile over. And that also, like, having control of certain color tiles factors in for certain endgame scoring conditions, because also as the game goes along, you're going to be collecting these endgame scoring cards, which will help you greatly if you can plan for them properly at the end of the game. Or
if you can understand them properly at first.
Right.
Because I think that was what happened with you. You didn't quite read it right.
Yeah. But the way that the actions are done in the game is through card play. So you have a hand of cards, and the cards are multi-use. You can either play cards to move your workers to different guilds. You can use them to put out new workers on the board, or each card has a unique action that you can use, spend that card to do that specific action. When it's your turn, you can play as few or as many of these cards as you want that are in your hand. Some of the actions do cost money, which you pay for in the form of discarding cards, which I found to be interesting. And it's a little Race for the Galaxy-esque in that respect, I think. The way that the game...
Here we go again.
Well, I'm just saying, that's what it reminded me of.
Did you buy it?
No, I didn't buy it. That's what it reminded me of, because like I said, you have cards that you use other cards to pay for.
You talked about Race for the Galaxy last episode.
We did,
too.
but I mean that's what I think of when I think of the card play in this game. Obviously, it adds the area control factor into it, and there's some jockeying for competition. There's also ways to replace your opponent's workers with neutral workers when a tile gets scored, that you can use to your advantage as well. All in all, you didn't really care for this one, I don't think.
No, it just kind of fell flat.
I was indifferent to it. It was okay. It actually also reminded me in some ways of Yokohama in terms of how
I can see that
you're putting workers out on certain tiles, and you're trying to get multiple workers on a tile to execute its action, essentially, which was interesting. The game also maybe carried on a smidge too long, possibly. And then you didn't like the fact that the board was kind of static the entire game. That's actually a problem with the 2-player version specifically, because in the 3 and 4-player versions, you start with a smaller board of tiles that will expand as the game goes along. But with 2 players, it's a fixed
right. And I think that definitely hurt it, because if you were getting at least a few new tiles into the mix, it might have helped things a little bit, but it kind of got stagnant over the course of the game for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a game where the addition of some kind of a neutral force, like we rail on neutral third parties sometimes in games and 2-player games.
Do.
Well, I do, but I think funnily enough, this is a game that could have actually benefited from that.
There's a game that I loved that you got rid of that had the third person in it, but
what's that?
Compounded.
Oh yeah, because I just didn't care for it.
I really liked it, but you just nope.
Yep.
You wouldn't even keep it around for higher player counts.
Nope. But like I said, with Guilds of London, I think it would have benefited from some kind of way to kind of clog up the tiles, I guess, a little bit more.
Yep.
Yeah. So as a result, this one just wasn't a big success for us. Not one that we're planning on revisiting. Probably just going to trade it away at this point. One that I don't think we're trading.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
Because if I say it on the air, then we'll actually do it.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be either putting up for sale or auctioning or mass trading a bunch of games away, so keep an eye out from PGG.
Well,
because, yeah, we need to clear out some space.
Yep. But one game that's not going to be included with that is Arkwright from Capstone Games, which we've had for at least 6 months.
At least.
If not longer. And we just haven't found the time to get it to the table, because it's always a little daunting, right? Like, this is a game that I keep hearing about, that it's excellent, but it's a beast.
I always get concerned when the box is huge.
Which this one is.
Yes.
This one is.
Very much so.
Not quite Odin size, not quite Colonist size, but it's still pretty big. Still pretty big. But we finally sat down and Em said...
Terra Mystica size.
Yeah. And Em said, I want to play this. Let's do it. So I finally read through the rules for the Spinning Jenny variant of the game, which is the introductory and shorter variants. Not even really introductory variant, just like the shorter variant, I guess. And Arkwright was a really interesting puzzle of a game, because this is a straight up like economic market manipulation game.
Very much more complex than you would deem it to be just by looking at it.
Well, my biggest fear with this game is that as I was reading through it when I was first looking at it, I was worried that you would find it to be really dry theme wise. And it is really dry theme wise, because it really is like straight up, hey, you're buying factories and you're setting the prices of your goods and you're hiring your workers and your factories are producing stuff and you're trying to raise the stock value of your company because that increases the value of your shares, and having valuable shares is the object of the game. You're trying to have the most lucrative portfolio when the game ends. But there's really not a lot of chrome on the game. There's not a lot of splash on the game. Like, it's very dry by the numbers. It's very mathy. It's very... plan ahead, can be very difficult.
Even the colors are very muted on the board and everything too.
But it works really well.
It was quite a bit of fun. Like I said, I always enjoy the puzzliness of things. You know me, I'm a puzzle girl.
Yeah. So it's cool because This one gives you a lot of control over what you're doing. Like it's a game where if you screw up, you really only have yourself to blame 100%, because when you build a factory, you set the prices for your goods. You determine how appealing your goods are to buy.
Well, and like there's only 4 different types of factories, I should say. And I was asking Brad, I was like, because he was mentioning in one round, he's like, oh, there's a penalty if you get to this round with such and such.
Well, factories will get obsolete eventually.
And I said, well, what about if you don't build it at all? Do you have to build all of the factories? And he was like, no. He's like, pick and choose. Which, like, for the first, like, half of the game, I just had 2 different types of factories. And then I threw a third one into the mix just for, because I was like, you know what? Nobody else is on this one, so let me get in here while I can and try and get the most out of it. It actually worked out in my favor.
Yeah, but at least in the Spinning Jenny version of the game, there are no surprises. Like, you know exactly what's going to happen. You know when the factories are going to produce. You can calculate the demand for a specific type of good.
How many turns it's going to be.
Right. You can. The only thing you can't calculate is what your opponent's going to do. So sometimes getting to play last in a round has its advantages. You know what you're going to do, so you know when it's a good time to buy more shares of stock because you're about to skyrocket the value of your stock through the roof.
Lord,
potentially.
Yeah. Once mine started going like up, I'm like, okay.
Yeah, how am I going to afford any of this?
And certain tiles let you pick up these special tiles from the board. And one of the special tiles was you get the first share you buy at half price. I'm like, okay, that's how I'm going to get some more shares in my company.
Yeah. Well, and it's cool because it reminded me a lot of Panamax, because Panamax is also a game where your personal money doesn't matter at all. Money is a means to an end. You're trying to buy stock. You're trying to buy shares, and you're trying to increase the value of those shares. That's how this game is as well. But money's still really important because you have to have money in order to do what you want to do.
It's funny because, like, at first it's like, okay, this seems like an alright amount of money. And as you go on and you have to pay your workers and stuff, I'm like, oh, good Lord.
Not only your workers, but also each round of the game, each player gets to perform one action. And you have these tiles that each have a picture of an action on them that determines what you get to do that round. But there's an administrative board with 5 spaces that run values from 2 to 10 in even number increments. And you have to put your tile on one of those spaces on your personal track each time you decide to do an action.
And you have to pay that out before you pay out whatever else you may have to pay.
Right now, not only do you have to pay the cost for the space, but also some tiles are better if you can put them on higher numbered spaces than they are if you put them on lower. So if you don't plan ahead for the entire decade,
I had that happen to me once.
Right, you might end up wanting to be like, oh, I want to do the better version of this action, but I don't have a space in order to do it.
Right. Well, I'm going to do this, and I'm like, oh poop, I got to put it in the $10 spot.
Yeah. So it's like I said, Arkwright. It definitely, at least the regular version, lives up to the hype. And the Spinning Jenny variant, first time playing only took us 90 minutes. Like, we breezed through the game. I've even heard that mode taking a long time for new players.
I think once we kind of understood what was what, that's what it is. Just once you get the symbols down, so okay, if I play this, it means a stock market action. If I play this, it means I get to increase my productivity.
Yeah, like I said, the actions were really simple. The only complex part of the game when you first started playing is when there's a market surplus of a specific good, and then you have to basically divvy out how the good is sold to different people. So, and that's a little confusing the first time you go through it, but once you've done that a few times, it's actually much easier to know exactly how that works.
Well, mine kept being when I would up my price, I'm like, I got confused at first about setting my price versus the market, how everything got calculated out. But I had it by the end of the game.
It's like I said, it was a very fun game. And weird for a game that's so mathy to be so fun. Super heavy. I'm looking forward to kind of looking into the water frame version, which is the full version of the game. But that's like a 3 to 4 hour experience from what I understand. So we'll have to plan that one out well in advance. But of course, we will report back here once we get a chance to do that at some point. But yeah, even the Spinning Jenny version by itself is a good game. And even if you only did that, it would still be a pretty decent economic game. And that's Arkwright, which we enjoyed quite a bit when we played it the other night. So this week we are reviewing a game that Em and I cannot get enough of in the few months that we've had it, and that is Clank, a deck-building adventure. This came out in 2016. Paul Dennen is the designer. It's published in the U.S. by Renegade Game Studios, and the title says it all. It is a deck-building adventure game. So think a deck-building game in the vein of Ascension, but with a like a dungeon crawling, treasure
with an
diving,
Indiana Jones-esque kind of thing.
Sort of. It's the closest comparison would be like Ink and Gold.
Well, like for me, I say that because like as you go through, like I said, you have the dragon and you snatch the stuff and you piss off the dragon. Like I said, he snatches stuff and the giant boulder comes rolling after him.
Yeah, the goal of the game is to use is to build your deck of cards, to dive as deep as you can into this dungeon and collect as much treasure, as much loot as you can, and then make it out with your head still intact before the dragon who guards the castle awakens and tries to kill you. So the way the game goes along, each player starts with a 10 card deck of cards that is the same for every player. And there's a row of 3 cards that are always available, one that helps give you movement, one that helps give you attack power, and then the secret tomes, which are just worth a ton of victory points but don't have much use outside of that. And then outside of that, there's a deck of cards.
They remind me of the cards you buy in trains.
Yeah, they're the victory point cards essentially. Mm-hmm. And then there's a buy row of 6 cards that's from a shuffled deck that will be replaced constantly throughout the game. And there's also a map. Both players start at the entrance of the dungeon, and the map is made up of a number of rooms that are connected through different tunnels, essentially. And on your turn, you're going to play cards out of your hand, and the cards will generate one of 3 different currencies, either the skill, attack power, or boots. Boots let you move throughout.
Boots are made for walking.
They are made for walking. They let you move throughout the castle through the different passageways. As you're going to go from passage to passage, room to room. Some rooms have treasures in them that you can collect or items that you can collect, which is always fun. Attack power lets you kill monsters that might be in the buy row of cards. There's also a goblin that's always available to smash in the face.
Also, in some of the passages, there'll be like a monster symbol, and you have to use a attack card or a sword to hit through that.
Correct.
Or else you take a damage.
Or you have skill, which you use to purchase cards. That's your currency to buy other cards. And you're going to use these. You're going to use your skill. You're going to buy some cards. You're going to add them to your discard pile. Of course, they'll get shuffled into your deck. Each card, or not every card, but a lot of cards also have a special ability that's unique to that card on it as well. So you can, of course, use that card's special ability. And the other currency that you have to worry about as you go throughout the game is some cards will generate the game's namesake, which is called Clank. And Clank is noise that you make throughout the dungeon that alerts the dragon.
Because, of course, you're clad in armor.
Of course, as you go through, or you're just noisy as you're searching things and doing things of that nature. So each player has a number of cubes that match their player color. And every time you add Clank, it goes on to a designated Clank area on the board. And there it will stay unless you get a chance to remove it. And it's going to stay there until eventually a card gets replaced in the buy row at the end of your turn that has a dragon rage symbol on it. And the dragon rage symbol means the dragon has woken up, has not taken kindly to you and your
pissed it off.
Yeah, you and your buddies being down in this castle, and so the dragon attacks. And when this happens, you take all of the Clank that is on this Clank space, and you put it into a draw bag. Now, the draw bag starts with 24 black dragon cubes in it, which are cubes that you want to be drawn because then it means no one is taking damage. But you're going to draw a number of cubes equal to where the dragon is situated on the dragon's rage track. And for every cube of a player color that's drawn out of that bag, that goes onto your damage track. And of course, if your damage track fills up, you are dead. And if you're going to, and dying is not the be all end all of the game. If you're going to die, you do at least have to die not in the depths of the dungeon, because if you die in the depths, then you get no points and you automatically lose. But if you do die on your way out of the dungeon, then you can at least get some victory points and let your possessions add up at the end of the game. So, but you want to manage your health as you go along.
Now, it can get worse because you can draw cards into the biros that say, oh, +1 draw out of the bag when you get a dragon card.
Yes. And the other thing that makes the dragon angry as well is there are a number of artifacts spread around the depths of the dungeon. And the real goal of the game is to go down there, collect one of those, and then to escape. But every time you pick up any player picks up one of these artifact tokens,
Mama gets more angry.
The dragon will get angrier and potentially draw more cubes every time they attack. There are all sorts of other secrets to find, like different treasures. You can also steal the dragon's eggs, the dragon's eggs, which also makes the dragon more upset whenever that happens. You can find some chalices. There are these monkey idols that you can get as well, which are everything you get is worth victory points. There's also markets that you can stop at on the board, where you can spend the gold that you accumulate as you go throughout the dungeons on a variety of different items.
There's a backpack, which I like, because the backpack will actually let you pick up an extra artifact, because you're only allowed to take one, but the backpack lets you take 2.
And see, I like the keys, which lets you go through different locked passageways, basically, that are the only way to escape those spaces. And it's just interesting because there's a lot of different paths that you can take on the board. There's no linear path. You're not locked to going one certain direction.
Now, did we mention the crystal caverns?
Oh, those are just, there's crystal caverns that impede your ability to move.
Like, once
swiftly.
you enter one, you have to stop moving. You can't move any further.
Right, but
unless you have a card that says you can.
Yeah, and the way the cards play out are interesting as well as you go through, because they'll do all sorts of different things, like let you teleport to different rooms or heal damage or get gold or, a variety of different stuff.
Now, like, there's some of them, I think they're mostly like victory point cards where it's like, okay, it's worth this amount of points, but you get this benefit from it now, but if you have to play it out of your hand, you have to add like 3 Clank to the mix. And I'm like, oh my God, it's like, is it worth it? You kind of got to weigh it.
So, basically you're going to go along until somebody's probably going to escape the dungeon at some point. And as soon as one person escapes, it starts a countdown clock, or as soon as one person dies also, for that matter, it starts a countdown clock for everybody else in the dungeon, because now each player only has, I think it's 3 turns before the dragon will just kill everyone that's in the room. And as you go, the more and more cubes are going to get drawn out of the bag. And if you haven't figured out, as you're going through the game drawing out cubes every time the dragon attacks, you're thinning out the dragon cubes out of the bag. So there's going to come a point where the high concentration of cubes are player cubes, and the damage starts flying fast and free.
Well, there are some cards that let you put dragon cubes back in the bag too, but they're few and far between.
They are very few and far between. So you're going to keep going until either everyone has escaped or the dragon has wiped everybody out, either way. And then you're going to tally up your points. You're going to get points for treasures you've taken. You're going to get points for the cards that are in your deck. You're going to get points for your leftover gold. And if you manage to escape the dungeon completely, you get a 20-point mastery bonus, which is a huge thing as well. And when it's all said and done, whoever has scored the most victory points is going to be
now
the winner.
The cool thing with this one is there is a companion app for your devices.
Yeah, there's an optional app. The Renegade Studios app actually adds a little bit of fun randomness to the game as well.
I like it a lot.
Where it's completely optional, and the app essentially gives you 3 events, and it says when any of these 3 events occur, tap the button in the app, and the app will randomly, sometimes it does nothing, and then sometimes it'll institute a small event that affects all the players, which is a fun way to add some variety into the mix as well.
What I really like it for is at the end of the game, counting up your points makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, they have a score calculator as well, which is also very, very cool.
Because it's like, pick which artifacts you got. Boom, boom, boom. Pick which this you got. Boom, boom, boom. You know what I mean? It makes it a lot easier.
Well, and ever since we started playing with the app, I don't think we've played a game without it.
No.
To this point. So
it's more fun.
It is more fun that way, having those
a little more variety. You know, a little more chance going on.
So the 2-player differences really aren't much in this one. The only thing that changed with 2 players is 2 of the artifact tokens get removed randomly before the game starts. So you don't have the full allotment of artifacts each round. And the dragon starts angrier than she would in a 3 or 4 player game. So meaning she'll be drawing more cubes out early on in the game, essentially. That's it. Other than that. So let's talk about this game a little bit. This is a very, very simple game. It's funny. It's amusing that we've played it as much as you and I have, because we've had it for 3 months now. We had got it at Unpub, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah, we bought it at Unpub, so we had it for 3 months, and we've played this probably more
for it.
Right. We've probably played this game more than any other game in our collection since we've gotten it. And I see that's funny because you and I tend to lean towards more complex games. Like, this game is really simple. It's very easy to play.
Maybe it's because we like so many complex games that this one kind of hit a sweet spot for us, and we're like, you know what, this is really fun. It's stupid simple, but it's just like the fun of it. It's just like, it's more than...
Right, and it's not very rulesy. It's not very rulesy at all, and it's not very complex. It's a easy game to teach. It's an easy game to learn how to play. Like I said,
it's pretty straightforward with the symbols, with everything.
Well, if you've played pretty much any deck builder, you're already 75% of the way there, pretty much, with how this game works, and you just need to learn the nuances of the different rules with this one. So I always say one of the questions we asked during our reviews is how hard was it for me to teach and how hard was it for Emily to learn? And I had no problem teaching this to you whatsoever.
No, not at all. Like I said, the biggest thing was just remembering, okay, cavern, if it's crystal cavern, I have to stop. Certain just rules about, I think certain monsters can only be killed in certain rooms. And, stuff like that, but nothing too major. Well,
I'll tell you what, one rule that we did mess up, or I shouldn't say we, it's me, because I'm the one that's the rules baron. The first couple games we played, I kept putting the black cubes.
Oh, he did. He kept putting the dragon cubes back in the bag.
Yeah, I kept putting them back in the bag, not realize. And then I think we came across one of the cards that lets you put the dragon cubes back in the bag, some of them. And I was like, why would this card exist if you just put the cubes back in the bag every time?
And then I realized that I missed. Like, oh crap!
Yeah, it never mentions to put the cubes back in the bag. I just assumed that was how it went. So don't make that stupid mistake that I made. That was the only thing that we ever really messed up, though. For sure.
To the best of them.
So, what do we like about this game? This game is just plain fun. It is always a hoot whenever we play.
I love the fact that I can drive you nuts with this game.
Why do you say that?
Because, okay, so Brad's one of those, he dives in the bag, pulls all the cubes into his hand, and then dumps them on the table. I'm a 1 cube at a time kind of girl, and it drives him insane. And I love it. I love watching you squirm as I'm pulling them out, like, oh my god, what color is it? Oh my god, what color is it?
Well, it's especially no fun when your damage tends to be very high, because it's not easy to get rid of damage.
No, it isn't.
It's the opportunities to do that are few and far between. But it's just so much fun. Most
of it's all on cards, isn't it?
No, actually, I think most of the way to heal damage is on the tokens. More so, the different secrets that you can come across. Because I saw
quite a few cards where, like, when you acquire the card, you get one.
There are a couple, but I don't think those are plentiful. I think those are few and far between, but there's a lot of the secret tokens that have healing on them, for sure. But yeah, it's just such a good time. It's a nice, like, you don't have to think too much about a deck builder. It's very obvious, like, the different combos that you can create with the different cards, and it's not a complex game like we've mentioned, but it's one that's, you can play it in 45 minutes. It's always a good time. I love the push your luck aspect of the game. That's the best part. And it's hard to do push your luck aspects with 2 players sometimes in a game where you're competing against one another. But this game really does encourage you to be like, well, how greedy can I be? Like, I know Em's kind of close to leaving the dungeon. She might be out within the next 3 turns.
This one across from me got his butt killed the one time because I'm like, all right, I'm going to get in. And it just so happened how my cards fell and everything. I was able to get in, get a decently point a decent point artifact and get out with some bonuses along the way. And this guy's like, I think you had gotten a backpack. You were trying to get a second one, and you're like, I can make it over to this one, and I'm getting out of there, and you're like, oh crap.
Well, and you think that like getting in and getting out would be the strategy to go with in this game, but you can't help but want to go to this next room that's over here.
But I'm right here, and I can go over there, and let's see what's on that secret question mark token, and but I can get one of the monkey idols, and there's the store. I can get a 10-point crown.
Yeah, and you know, buying, like you said, buying the different artifacts in the store, right. And making your gold more lucrative than it is really good. I love the variety of cards that come in the game, so that you can't plan for specific strategies. Some people won't like that randomness. Some people won't like the, you know, having just a complete. You could have one game where there's barely any monsters and barely any dragon attacks and just a ton of cards coming out. You could have the game where every round someone's drawing attack cards and letting the damage pile up quickly. I like that because it keeps the game feeling fresh every time you play. And that's a really good deal. What else do you really dig about this?
I mean, I like the I love the dragon. I think that's like the coolest thing, that she's just like, you know what? I'm going to zap your butt. And I like the dragon token and the bag and all that. Like all the little pieces, everything just kind of works so well with the game. It's not fun when your opponent's the one that causes the dragon to wake up and all of your cubes get pulled out of the bag. That's never a good time. Yep. But it's just kind of it's the fun frustrations of this game. It's kind of you got to weigh your options. Do I take the Clank? Do I not take the Clank? You know what I mean? Like, well, and again, that's part of the press your luck aspects of the game. Sitting there going, no whammy, no whammy, no whammy. Yeah. Some stuff that I dislike. There's not a ton. I will say that the card stock that the cards are printed on is not the best. It's very thin. It's very flimsy. I felt the desire to sleeve these cards right away so that they don't wear. Of course, they have dark borders so that you'll see any shuffling wear on them almost immediately. So the card component's not the best. That's a minor nitpick, I guess. I'm trying to think of stuff about the game itself that I don't really have anything that I don't care for. I mean, like, so those games where it is just dragon attack, sometimes aren't the most fun, but it is just one game. And of course, like if you are not happy being a slave to the forces of randomness, of random card draw, like if you're trying to move in the dungeon, you keep not able to draw boot cards out of your deck, then yeah, you're not going to have a good time with this game. But if you go in like understanding, hey, it's a card game, it's random, and plus your decks get like, this is not a deck trimming game by any means. This is a fat deck game. Your deck's going to get really big as you go along, so you can't. I think I've only seen 2 cards in the game that allow you to get rid of anything. They're few and far between for sure. And so again, if you like playing deck building to set up these very elaborate combos and to have this fine-tuned machine of a deck that you can do in some deck building games like Dominion and things of that sort, then this is not going to be a game that you enjoy, because this is more of the trains style, like unwieldy, massive deck. Massive piles of trash in your deck. Not even trash, but just like you can't even call out your basic movement cards and your basic, skill cards, which as the game goes on become more and more useless to you. Absolutely. So, but you don't have the opportunity to get those things out of your deck. There's, like Em said, there's some cards that let you do it, but it's not really. I've only seen like 2, I think. So comparable games, the first one that pops in my mind, and we've said it on the show before, and we'll continue to talk about it, is this game is the same weight as Ascension, basically. And this game has basically made it so that if I never played Ascension again, I'd be all right with that, because Clank has sort of taken over that level of deck building game for me. Makes me a little sad. When Clank is so fun. It is fun, but what are you gonna? I still have a soft spot for Ascension.
Yeah. So if you like games the way, like deck building games the weight of an Ascension, maybe a little bit under like where a Thunderstone would be, that's kind of where Clank sits, I would say. Who would we recommend it to if you like deck building games? I mean, that's where that's who's gonna love this, and it's because it's deck building with that extra element of the dungeon crawl
board.
added in. So again, if you don't like deck building games, I don't think this is changing your mind for any reason. But if you, and I'll tell you what too, this would also be good to introduce to maybe more casual gamers who enjoy games that have like a push your luck element, and maybe you introduce something a little bit more complex to them, and this could be a good jumping off point for that, I would say. 2 players, yeah, I'd say so.
Absolutely.
We've played it exclusively 2 players. It works just fine.
We haven't played with him. Oh no, you had.
Yeah, I had company over and played a 2-player game,
and then he immediately bought it.
Yeah. Friend of mine that I had over to play it checked it out for the first time and bought it as soon as he got home. When he got home, but yeah, we've exclusively played it at 2 players, and it's great. It works just fine. There's no benefit to having extra players, except I guess there's more calamity in the dungeon.
I'd like to play it at a higher player count just to see what it's like.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd imagine that secrets are harder to get because there's more competition for them, and the higher artifacts might be a little bit more challenging to pick up.
Well, I just want to see what the race is like who's the first one to get out and see how you have to.
Oh, how you have to hustle out?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but
that would be hilarious, seeing everybody sweating bullets trying to get out.
But yeah, Clank is just a fantastically fun game. Like, if we ever are in the mood to play something light, this is usually the one that I'm recommending.
This is
now.
Usually if we've just played something super heavy, we can bust this one out. If we want just something to warm up for the evening, we'll bust this out. Mm-hmm. If we only have a half an hour, 45 minutes, we'll bust it out.
It's been tremendous fun. It's been a great time. I don't see us playing it any less, honestly, over the next several months. It really has just taken with us. More than most games have recently that we've been playing. It just kind of hit that right spot for us for sure. Now there's one more thing to talk about with Clank, and that is the Sunken Treasures expansion, the first expansion that's out for the game. Sunken Treasures adds a new double-sided game board, which has 2 different maps that you can use. It adds, I think it's 35 new cards into the mix. And as the name would imply, the Sunken Treasures part of the game adds a pirate, like a sunken ship expansion that adds water into the mix. And water as a gameplay element is a new challenge that you have to overcome, because if you start a turn underwater and don't end a turn above water, because a lot of the spaces are submerged, then you take damage. But a lot of the most lucrative spaces on those boards are in the depths under the sea.
But also in the store, there's a scuba tank you can buy.
Yeah, there's a scuba tank you can get so that you can breathe underwater. You don't need to worry about it. The Sunken Treasures expansion also adds an always available enemy, which is a goldfish. Mm-hmm.
It's a mean looking goldfish.
It is a mean looking goldfish.
It's like a vampire goldfish,
but you can only fight it underwater.
Fangs.
The other thing it adds too that's very cool is it has a lot of cards that give you an okay benefit when you play them, but it gives you an extra benefit, a better benefit, if you can somehow discard those cards out of your hand before you get a chance to play it. So it invites a little bit more combo heavy play because you want to combine those cards with cards that let you discard cards out of your hand so that you can really take advantage of those and make them awesome. This is, if you enjoy Clank, this is a no-brainer expansion. Doubling the... I
believe as soon as we heard about this, we were already, okay, when's it coming out? And we had it pre-ordered, ready to rock and roll.
Right. It's more cards. It's another double-sided board, which is 2 more maps to play, which now, if you combine that with the base game, gives you 4 maps to choose from. That's pretty good. The cards can stay in for the most part when you're playing.
Brad broke our map.
Well, no, it wasn't me that broke our map. Apparently,
it was you that broke the map.
Well, yes, but it's not my fault, is what I'm saying. So apparently, the only downer with Sunken Treasures is the first print run of the expansion had the map boards were faulty from the factory.
They were still wet when they did something. They said, because I was reading the letter when we got our new board, and it's like, yes, we understand the irony. It was too wet, and it was Sunken Treasures.
Right, but so the boards are prone to tearing, but Renegade was very cool about it. They replaced our board very quickly, and I know all the subsequent printings out there have the updated board. So if you get a first edition printing of the expansion, you can get the board replaced. If you buy it now, the version that's in stores, it should be fine. But yeah, it's a no-brainer expansion. I would even go as far to say that if you think that this is a game that you would like and you go to pick up Clank, if they have the expansion, just buy that as well. Yep. I don't think you would be disappointed having that in your arsenal. And there's supposed to be more expansions coming out throughout the next year or so, I think.
Sweet.
For the game, which is very cool.
It.
Yeah, like I said, it's a great game, and one that I can't recommend enough for deck building fans out there. Where is this? So if we revisit our deck building pantheon real quick, and longtime listeners know we do love our deck building games. It's not quite up to Legendary Encounters. I still think that's the standard bearer. And it doesn't quite scratch the same itch as Eminent Domain does, but that's a different type of game.
That's a different type of deck builder.
Different type of game. I gotta say, though, I think that this might beat out Trains.
Really?
I think so. Because it's more fun than Trains. Like, Trains is more like tactical. It's a little bit more long-term planning. This one just is... It's not burdened by those things. It's just more fun. You can react to the cards that you have more. And
this one's more a button masher.
A little bit, I guess. That's a decent way to put it. But yeah, I would probably put this over Trains right now, if it were me. So. Well,
I mean, if it's any indication by. If we're going to play something and you're like, oh, Clank, when I had suggested Trains the one night, you're like, And I think then we came around to Clank, and you're like, yes, let's play Clank. And it's like, okay.
Yeah, like I said, if I can only have one, it would still be Legendary Encounters, but this is sliding in, I think, at the 2 spot right underneath. Right underneath that right now. It's a good game. Yeah. It's a great game. So that was our review of Clank. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. If you have not played it and have any questions, or if you have played it and want to chime in, definitely let us know on online. What you think about the game and Sunken Treasures as well. So that is going to be it for our show this week. Just a reminder as well, make sure to check out all the other great TNP Studios Network shows, which include the Nerdpocalypse, the Dense Pixels podcast, and Black on Black Cinema. And if you get a chance, go to densepixels.com or thenerdpocalypse.com/premium and sign up for a premium membership to check out more great shows on the premium side of things. That's just $5 a month or $50 for a whole year. We would appreciate it if you did that. Yeah, that's it. Thank you all very much once again for listening, and we will see you next episode.
Bye.